classic entrepreneur, every day is a new dawn. They constantly change their minds. They will be highly creative. They'll be destructive when they don't mean to be. Their EQ and IQ sometimes are not equally matched, and that's what I have observed. But I mean, I'm the essence of all the businesses we invest in is in the DNA is in the entrepreneur and the founder. So I always embrace them and have a huge amount of respect for people who took the initial risks in putting money in.
Welcome and welcome back. Hi, Florian. How are you doing?
Hello, Mario. I'm doing fine.
Florian, when you look in restaurant brands, what's the three main important things you look in?
First of all, you look into the brand. What is it? What does it represent? What does it sell? So what is the product, basically? I'm always interested in the potential of the brand. So is there a chance to grow? And more important, or most important to me, is basically to know who runs the brand. Now, who are the people behind it that build it?
So brand, white space, and the leadership.
People. Yeah, or the people. I would even make it broader, not only the leadership, also the culture and the people in general.
So we're gonna have a guest today, Florian, who will tell us his secret recipe and will challenge you. So before we welcome Rowland, I would like to say a few words about him. He's an industry veteran, which means normally that they're becoming old, Robin, but they're also very experienced and wise. He's currently an operating partner of TriSpan. That's a private equity firm which invests in around the world. And for us, for our industry, Relevant is one of their funds. It's the so-called Rising Star Fund, 300 million under management. It's a dedicated fund under industry with 10 transactions recently, L'Atelier, Mowgli, Faux, Thunderbirds, and many, many more. But before Robin joined TriSpan, he was Mr. Yo Sushi. He built that restaurant chain up to the fast casual hero of that time with over 100 restaurants. And recently, the business was sold with almost $500 million valuation. So welcome, Robin.
Hi, Mario.
I hope I got all the facts right. So when I read up and listened to some interviews you have done, especially when you still have been operating your sushi, you always talked about the 5 P's and the continuous improvement of people, product, property, promotion, and profit. And as this is a podcast more about the struggles and roadblocks and difficulties, so if you look back on your career on these 5 P's, what's normally the most difficult to improve? Is there a general answer to that where you say, okay, this is the one where there needs to get the most effort in, or which is the most difficult one based on your experience over time?
Well, I think in my mind, people is probably the biggest challenge over time, because you're doing alchemy with businesses. You're creating this wonderful collection of creative opportunities for people to get involved with, but you do need to have people on the journey who do different things at different times, and people keep on changing. But like anyone going to war, we have to have extraordinary quality of leadership to get anywhere. And it's one of the pleasures of what I do today. But I find whenever I look at a business, I mean, Florian said it well, I think you can easily touch and feel and smell a business, but what you can't do is see the potential of teams once you put the right people in the right place. And that's transformational. So I spend an awful lot of time on trying to put the right teams together. The other 4 are fantastically important, but you haven't got much of a business without really good people.
Do you touch businesses if the brand, the product, everything is great, but the people are not great? Is there really a chance to kind of cut them off and exchange them and restart? Is there even a chance in our industry, or also now fast forward you as an investor now, if you would even look in something where you say that's really great, but we need to basically eliminate the whole leadership?
Yeah, we have. I mean, our thesis at the TriSpan was we don't do turnarounds. It's not our mandate was to be an accelerator for growth for businesses and um, put the next level of management in place to help them grow. But having said that, we had done some really good work on one little business called Thunderbird, which was a business that was trying to find its feet for 2 years. And then we did a complete change of management. And I call it the Holy Trinity. We had to change the CEO, the CFO, and the operations director, all three. And once the Holy Trinity was in place, we had a business which we could start growing. And they're running a 20% like-for-like growth this year. So but these things always take 6 months to bed in minimum. So yes, we need a fair bit of patience, but I think we don't actually go and seek businesses that are in distress, but we can actually turn things around by improving the quality of management.
Robin, on people, the follow-up question there, how do you invest in people, or how do you coach people? Because one thing is to say, okay, they are perfect, they're the right people with the right skill set at the right point of time in the right company. The other extreme is what you said, is say, okay, we need to exchange them. And then we have the middle ground, which is our day-to-day work as mentor and investors and leaders, is to take them on the road. So what you normally do if your people in the investment struggle, what you do with them, how you take them on the journey, on the hand?
Well, I mean, I know it worked for me, and personally, it's about getting fantastic mentors. So pretty much all our C-suite managers have got mentors in other businesses, and I get a lot of cross-fertilization of ideas. And I took all my CEOs and I went out to America last week, and we spent a week on the road together in New York and Nashville. So the kind of spreading of good practice and having a peer group is essential, and particularly for the CEO. I think it's probably the loneliest job in the world. You do need to have you know this because you've been in the same place. You do need people who are having a similar experience to yourself and maybe a bit ahead of you to tap into their networks and their brain. You can't do this on your own. And then the formal coaching piece, you can pay for it. And a couple of our team have got that in place where they have life coaches who are helping them structure their own thought processes. But for me, I'm a pretty active chairman. I spend quite a bit of time with my direct reports or my CEOs, and they seem to have all the answers, but sometimes they need somebody to tease them out of them. I mean, I think that's the absolute pleasure of developing teams, because we all underestimate our capabilities, but just a bit of confidence. And the Brits aren't brilliant at it. They sometimes are rather reserved because they don't wear their heart on the sleeve or shout about it. If you just tease them into taking a few steps, you'd be surprised what happens, and it compounds over time. And you can't sit and do nothing. I mean, I always encourage all the teams basically. I'd rather do something rather than nothing, and don't always aim for perfection, because it's better you're moving forward than prevaricating. And I think we all know in our guts when the decision needs to be made around property or people, or a promotion of some kind, or a menu item. You can't sit there and overanalyze it. And I think Clive said it well about you just need to keep moving forward and take decisions.
You have to act, he said. Yeah. Well, you wanted to say
Robin, I would like to move back for a moment from your current business and go back to the time when you started Yo Sushi, and that is more than 20 years ago now, or around 20 years ago. What was the most difficult situation you had as a founder of such an iconic brand? Do you recall anything that you could share?
Yeah, well, people know, and I mean, know the business. It was a business that was created by Simon Woodruff, and I became his business partner in '99. We had 2 restaurants, and then for me, I was working with an extremely creative and dynamic individual. And for me, the challenging bit was actually harnessing, what he was brilliant at, and actually delivering and executing on the numbers, and keeping the teams straight, because we were definitely, 2 sides of our brain. So that was the challenging bit, working with the original founder. And then we had some cash flow issues. I mean, we went through bank workouts. I mean, I can say that now because it's 1,000 years ago. And we went off and did other things. We did a bar business called Yo Below with singing waitresses and drink beer on tap, and we were overly creative. And whenever we had some money, we just spent it. We didn't really think very hard about it, and it wasn't. I love the chaos that we were creating around us. I mean, so there were times that, and having come from a large corporate background, to actually living from month to month and looking at the cash flow, and learning quickly that you can't run the business without it. That was my biggest challenge in the early days. But we got through that. And then we were properly financed by primary capital in 2003. And the rest was history, frankly.
And Robin, looking back at this transition, because we very often have that if somebody comes in and takes a strong founder, a founder-led business and converts it into, builds the platform, makes it fundable, as we call it, and get the private equity in and going on this journey, but still keeping the founder in, a great perspective. And now you're doing a lot of that too by having strong founders in your businesses. What's a good advice to take the founders on the road, or is it better not to take them on the road and isolate them? Or what's your advice for all the leaders and managers who go into a business where there's a strong founder, but you are, which you have been with your Sushi, in charge, so to say, and taking the business on the road? What's the good advice to act in such situations?
I mean, if you've got mutual respect, and there's an acceptance that you have skill sets that they may not have, then you're halfway there. I think you have to be very, very patient sometimes, because you have to realize they're wired differently. I'm a kind of corporate entrepreneur, I suppose, in terms of learning the skills of running a business and then taking lots of decisions about the brand. But I think a classic entrepreneur is every day is a new dawn. They constantly change their minds. They will be highly creative. They'll be destructive when they don't mean to be. Their EQ and IQ sometimes are not equally matched, and I mean, that's what I have observed. But I mean, I'm the essence of all the businesses we invest in is in the DNA is in the entrepreneur and the founder. So I always embrace them and have a huge amount of respect for people who took the initial risks and putting money in, and putting their house on on the market to actually fund their first investments. And I did the same in a relatively yo when I joined and put a lot of my own money into the business. But I think you're foolish if you just think you can just blueprint their ideas, because sometimes the best is still yet to come. And I mean, like really good entrepreneurs, and Simon just thought about things differently. I mean, it's rock and roll as far as he's concerned. And it was,
there's a lot of good founder teams out there which are very different. Sometimes they end up in a fight. Sometimes they stay mutual friends. There's examples for both sides. But as when you face the crisis in the early days, whichever you want to choose, how did you, like in the really, let's say in the first 10 years in the cowboy and the Wild West, the growth of your Sushi, how did you handle them? Because you have been a young leader, you had a strong founder. So how did you approach this crisis?
Well, if I think about it, there are kind of three crises like experience. One, we had the dot-com crisis where sales did drop off. I mean, I think around 2000, 2001, that was a bit of a surprise to everybody. And then the really meaningful one was 2008, where clearly, the world suddenly the brakes were jammed on with the financial crisis and the back half of that year. I mean, my view is I'm an eternal optimist, so I just look for opportunities, and we went double down on opening sites. I think we opened 8 or 10 sites in 2008 and 9, which everybody else has stopped investing. So I've always been fairly counterintuitive and looking for the opportunities, particularly around property at that stage. And I've done the same coming out of COVID, where other people were too scared to tread. We went in boldly and picked up some of our best sites. And also hiring really good people. I think a lot of the best people came to us because other businesses were shedding, or they were frustrated working for really dysfunctional businesses. So I was able to scoop up an amazing operations director and a CFO who were displaced from businesses which should never have lost them in the first place, but we were a good home for them. So So
take the crisis to, especially you mentioned now 2 times, and I know how important property was and is in your way how to look on business. So you say if you believe in your business, use the crisis and get the property cheaper because you're alone out there to look for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I know the UK so well. I mean, every single street. I probably traded there at some point in my 40-year career. And if I don't, I'm unashamedly will ask anybody else's advice. And the remarkable thing about the restaurant world is people are quite generous in terms of giving advice. So I actually, went and found, able to access sites which I thought were impossible to get hold of. And the other thing, I said, like, what advice I could give to people in terms of crisis, you just have to have realize it is not life or death. I mean, you just have to be philosophical about it. But as a leader, you've got to be calm while everybody else around you is, worried about their own ability to pay their bills. Because the last thing you want to do is pour more fuel on the fire of their discontent or their unhappiness. I think you're a chief happiness maker in university. You have to be.
But that is, I mean, I like to listen to you because you obviously embrace crisis as something which has more positive aspects to you than negative aspects as a leader and as a businessman. And that is also something we try to figure out in that podcast, that you are coming from a situation of doubt into a situation of drive. How was it, Robin, when you sold your business, when you sold Yo Sushi? Was that at a moment where you felt yourself ready to let go?
No, it's slightly complicated because I'd run the business as the CEO. I wasn't majority shareholder, clearly, because it's too big a value business, and it was a circa 100 million value business in 2015. And I was chairman of the business. I was looking to do other things because I was at a certain age. I thought I've got another 10 years of me ahead of me. But the buyers of the business in 2015 stipulated I had to go back and run it as a CEO. So I still couldn't escape in 2015. I went back to run it for another couple of years as CEO. And then I said, I just want to transition to NED. So I gradually extracted myself out of the business I'd grown and loved and built. And we bought a Canadian business before I left, and as a full-time CEO. So that's where Mario's got his 200 million number. And then I sat on the board and we bought a business in the West Coast of America called Snowfox. And the business became much bigger and it became a very different business, the one I created. It wasn't a restaurant-led business. It was a convenience supermarket sushi production business. And it's huge in America and Canada. And the UK is a much smaller part of the jigsaw now. So I didn't sell my business. I gradually sold my shareholdings down, wanting to do other things. But I wasn't in complete control of it because we had majority shareholders who had their own vision of what they want to do with it, and it was time for me to move on.
And Robin, after that transition phase, you said like CEO, then you were chairman, but now obviously you're on the other side, so to say, you're mentor, you're investor, and we talk about in a second about TriSpan. But I want now to see how you interpret this role as a non-exec or whatever we want to call it. It's not the acting guy. If now one of your portfolio crisis, one of your investors go into a crisis or into struggles like we all do, it's the normal up and downs of business life, how do you differentiate within the new role? Because back then you said, I was in charge, I took the risk, as Florian said, I saw the opportunity, I went out there and signed a bunch of locations, but you maybe have now a completely different kind of leader. Maybe a risk-averse leader, maybe a more careful leader, etc. How you see your role now within your portfolio companies if there is a struggle in that company? How do you react? How do you coach?
Well, we have okay. I guess starting, we're pretty structured in terms of our communication. So we have it's very interesting compared with America, by the way. That's why I'm thinking about it to answer the question. But in the UK, we have a weekly call, which is kind of a quick trading update, but it's talking about anything else going on in the business, particularly around property and people. We have a really good board meeting structure where I have the patience of a gnat, and I cannot go beyond 3 hours. So we start and we finish on time, and it moves at pace, and everyone knows what we're going to cover off. And over time, that creates, I think, a kind of spirit of trust between us, and there's a shared community between the Holy Trinity and my side of the room, which is basically myself and one of my colleagues, another partner in TriSpan, and we very often have one more Ned on our boards. So our boards are quite heavy because we got some very experienced ex-chairmen Karen Jones is on my ugly board. Steve Hills, ex-Wagamamas, is on my faux board. So you've got really high quality people around the table helping the management team. So if things go well, that works, and there's a level of pace that everyone understands.
But how much you step in, like how much you let them fail and do their own way out, and how much you say, look, by the way, in 1985 we had the same thing, and that's what we have done. Like, how much space do you give them?
I give them enough rope for them to hang themselves if they really want to. But I have not got, and they, but I don't want to tell them what to do. I want to encourage them to come to a lot of their own conclusions. And ultimately, there are certain things which, as an investor, we want to return our cash. Ultimately, we exist to basically invest at a certain price and sell us at the next price, another price, and we have to make sure the profitability is moving seamlessly in the right direction. I know that it's a game of snakes and ladders, and over a 5-year time frame, there's going to be one dog year in their 5 years, but you hope they're going to be making good progress, and you come out in the end on a high. So if it's not happening, and I will try and find some shortcuts, which we've done cleverly through purchasing or systems, which I hope they'll embrace. And I will encourage them to take on board these ideas. Ultimately, I have the sanction, because we're majority shareholders, to tell them what to do. But that's kind of not where I'm at. So it hasn't been needed, but there is a bit of patience required to get people to. You can take a horse to water, but you can't force them to drink.
And Robin, last question on that topic: was it difficult for you, because a lot of people we talk to have difficulties to change the side? Because as a strong leader, obviously you listen to your team, you listen to the shareholders, but you used to make the shots. I mean, it becomes part of your DNA. You have done that 20, 30 years. And then your role changed. Do you have any advice for people in similar situation who change from a executive role to a non-executive role on how to behave, especially in crisis? Because if it's sunshine, it's easy. But is there any advice?
I think you need to join a well-established business which has other Neds. You need to basically mirror other people's behaviour and recognise you're not there to cover yourself in glory or be the front man. You have to be endlessly positive and philosophical in the front of the execs, because they don't expect and don't deserve to be bullied. But you're going to learn this hopefully by mirroring some other Ned's behaviour. It's quite tricky. I mean, you also have some fiduciary responsibilities which are different to being an exec. So my strong advice is try and get onto a board that's already got other Neds and learn from them. And do not jump into becoming a chairman until you've actually been a Ned for a while. And I'm very lucky that I sit on two PLC boards. And when you sat on a PLC board in the UK, which has a lot of corporate governance around it, you realise how patient you do need to be, because a lot of it's and I sit there going, what value is this adding? So, but a private equity board is much more, it still has corporate governance, but doesn't have to tick all the boxes. But I've been on Marston's board for 10 years. I've been on Fuller's board for 3 years, and I work with Jerry on Nero. So it's not, but you're not there to lead the changes. You're there to encourage and to facilitate and be a sounding board. And you're there on behalf of the investors, ultimately, as an edge. You really need to understand that. There is a mindset which you need to go get your head around.
Is there a playbook or something that you rely on when you say we want to pick this or that company? This is something that interests us. Basically, a little bit the same question Mario asked me in the beginning of this interview.
Let's double check Florian's answer.
How do you do that?
Yeah, we have got a playbook. I mean, you can imagine you can't raise money unless you've got a thesis which you can play out. But we tend to invest in businesses which are they're proven, but they're not huge. They're probably 10 sites, maybe getting on towards 2 million EBITDA. We like to make sure it's not a one-trick pony. It needs to be. In our case, we know the way the restaurant world's going. It needs to have something differentiated about it, and the food has to be fresh. And then I will spend an awful lot of time crawling around customer data to understand what people's perception of the brand is, and then the finances are easy because that's backward looking. That's looking in the rearview mirror. But the quality of the management team, going to your answer, Florian, was where I do spend a disproportionate amount of time. I mean, the last call I was on, I was talking to a founder who a brilliant founder, and ironically, for this call. And I said, you have got to sort out your management team. I can't invest unless we have a scalable business. And that doesn't mean, give me a list of the sites you'd like to open. Show me the quality of the management team and your structure for opening and employing another 100 or 500 people. And that you got to get your head around that. And it is extraordinary. Marion knows this, because on the international side, how there are some rules about how hospitality works. And being in Dallas last week, I could say there's things there which were no different to being in Manchester. They are, you look for the same essence of the business, and unless the team can articulate it as well, I'm always staggered that people think they can grow a business unless they have well-trained people at the front line as well.
And to these three criteria, which Florian said at the beginning, to say, like, let's say brand, white space or growth potential, whatever you want to call it, and then people, is there any key area you look in the first one when you basically really look on several businesses? Because you invested in 10, I guess you looked in 50, 60, even 100. What else is a key criteria for you, or for you within TriSpan, to say this is, I have to look deep in before I even engage in a due diligence? Is there anything else?
Yeah, I mean the financial metrics are pretty well known. Everyone looks for a 3-year payback on new investments. In terms of a new site, ROI should be 3-year, and it has to be consistent across the piece. I'm looking for lighter weight concepts. I'm looking for quite agile, but very relevant and contemporary offers. So unlikely to invest in a steakhouse restaurant business, like TJ Fridays, which is obviously had its day. I'm looking for food which is future food, and obviously the whole Asian explosion that's happened in my career. Sushi was at the heart of that. So I do think there's more of that for us. We like that space. And then there's a bit about brands not being on a honeymoon. I mean, there are some brands that go like Neat or burgers who seem to be faddy and then goes right through the roof, but they're not underpinned by a long-term customer demand, or there's nothing there which is beyond. Then it has to be real substance behind a business. And I think we all know intuitively whether the business is healthy or not, but we're looking for ones that can grow at the same time.
And Robin, as this is a podcast which is listened by a lot of people from our industry, as we know from the first statistics, what kind of companies would fit to you? Like, if you're out there and there's a lot of founders and entrepreneurs listening and say, okay, am I a fit to the philosophy of TriSpan? Like, besides the concept and the people and the white space and everything we'll talk, what kind of company, size-wise, direction-wise, cuisine-wise, geography-wise, would be happy to be with you? So, because this is also some, I don't want to say matchmaking platform, but we heard after a lot of the interviews we have done that some people have been contacted and found new people, found investments. I want to also take this opportunity, because especially in that size where you're active, there's not so many investors out there, and we also want to help our fellow entrepreneurs to get the money from the right people. So who will be happy with you? Let's put it that way. What kind of entrepreneurs, what kind of concept would be happy with you?
I mean, again, so someone who's got 5 to 10 sites, which are probably operating in different locations, would give us some comfort that's worth investing in. We want businesses run by bright, driven people. The food has to be the center of the universe. Now the team has got and I'm obsessed about happy teams and happy guests. And if I need to understand those two metrics, if I don't get happy teams and happy guests, we're probably not going very far in the conversation. And then it's like, these are the kind of people I want to spend time with. I'm kind of at a point in my life. I don't want to be pushing water uphill with people who don't want to learn or want to work with us. I think we're a wide church. There's only 2 or 3 dedicated restaurant platforms that I'm aware of in the investment space. So anybody who did want to do work with us should just reference us within any of our existing investment portfolio. I'm not worried about what those founders or the CEOs are going to say, but what they will say is what we bring is a kind of a measured discipline, a robust but friendly, supportive challenged to make sure the business does grow. We put the rails on track, training the rails, and we make sure that people have got a proper strategy for growing their business over a 3 to 5 year time frame. And for many businesses, that is a complete surprise. Well, it isn't that complicated, but you do need to know where you're going to get to. And most entrepreneurs, which I'm one as well, always overestimate what they can do in the short term. They think, I can do all this in 3 months. Reality is we underestimate what we can do over the long term. Right. So I'm just I try and coach the entrepreneurs to put some plans in place so they can actually feel like they're moving forward. But no, we see on both sides of the Atlantic between 50 and 100 businesses a year. We only select 2. Probably 2 or maybe 3. And I will also I will take a call from many people, and happy to just give mentor, give advice. And if it's not right for us, I can recommend some other people who might be good for them. What we do is I've never lost a deal in the 6 years. Everything we really wanted to do, we've managed to transact on. And it's a long courtship. I mean, I'd rather spend a year getting to know a business rather than rush at something in a ridiculous process and find that we've made poor judgments on the investment. So we tend to give a lot of advice away, I guess, and that has, I think, in the rounds, I think being generous with advice and people like Clive and similar, I think does pay off because you get to know and trust people before you.
100%. Yeah. It's a small community. We all fight each other.
Happy teams and happy guests. I would subscribe to that immediately. But Robin, I would like to learn a little bit more about yourself. Is there something that keeps you up at night? You are so positive, and you see chaos and crisis as something more positive. Is there also something that bothers you, or where you say it keeps me up at night?
I get frustrated with things like
there you go. There you go.
In my back of my head, I have this sort of inkling that I could do a better job than some of the politicians we have, and it's on both sides of the Atlantic. And I just worry about the low level of economic understanding, the impact they have on driving inflation. I think it's very tricky. I guess being a politician, but I do think they misunderstand how valuable hospitality is. So I just get worried about hospitality not being treated on a level playing field with Amazon or whatever, because I think we are not
huge industry.
The right. It's a huge industry, and it's the social fabric of the UK. Yeah. I mean, all my children, their first jobs are obviously working in pubs and restaurants, and it creates it's part of our culture. And if you learn service, you're learning life skills, and I just don't want this industry to wither on the vine. It deserves to be respected as well as a career. I mean, they're not major problems. I'm an eternal optimist, and I've been blessed with fantastic people to work with, which should carry the businesses through. And I think I think the UK is still a remarkable powerhouse of really good operators. So I suppose that's maybe.
So maybe Robin, that's the third career after being a successful leader in changing the industry, then going into changing approach in private equity, and then maybe changing the political approach towards hospitality. Maybe that's the third career. The last question, Robin, is always for us the most important one, because it's also, as you said, giving back as a mentor, as a leader, and giving a tool set for entrepreneurs to find back their drive. So if people, and I know you do a lot, and you said you give a lot of time, and you talk to hundreds of companies, and then you only invest, and people in difficult situation and struggle who have roadblocks in whatever form and shape, what's the first aid toolkit of Robin to apply to coach and help entrepreneurs out of their crisis back into the driving seat? What is it what you apply if I call you and say I'm down, I'm drowning, what should I do? How is Robin helping me?
Well, I mean, I guess I've kind of moved over the last 6 years. I had to learn, the financial construct of a business is a difference between survival or going under. And I think I think I want them to understand their cash flow in a meaningful way, because I think without that, you probably are kidding yourself. I would be trying to coach them to make sure that they understand how to actually control costs better, which I'm afraid some people are still blind to, where they're wasting money. And then, you have to seek support from other people, so you can actually talk to suppliers or landlords to get some relief. And I think I've just been working in America with one of our portfolio companies, and it's quite remarkable what we achieved in 3 months in terms of, we closed sites, we've re-geared leases, we've sourced out our financing. But you have to act quite fast. I mean, and you just have to have a plan. So, and if you don't have that competence, you're going to have to go and get some help. You need a good, a really, really good financial controller, at least, to understand the art of the possible. But having a clear plan of action, which is what we did with Sushi years ago, and then having a bank manager who's prepared to see you through, as long as you can actually deliver on your promise over a period of time, I think is fundamental. And then, cut things to the bone, which are fripperies and unnecessary costs, which you'd be surprised how much you can take out just to survive. And I think you're going to make helping an entrepreneur make tough decisions, which is what we did in America with the team, was the hardest bit. But again, you've got to strike fast. You can't. Once you've got your plan, you execute. And that may not be.
I'm really happy you said that with the cash flow, because I was really blessed. We're having great mentor early stage as an entrepreneur, and I still remember this prolonged runway. Yeah, because I think that's almost overlooked. Like, the more you hold together the cost, the more you get the time to still prove a turnaround, a success, etc. Yeah, this cash flow, as unpopular as it maybe is in the first coaching meeting, is something really, really valuable. Yeah, because you need to have the time to prove whatever you want to prove. Is it a turnaround? Is it the ramp up of a new restaurant, etc.? So I'm very happy you brought that up, because I remember back then, for me, it was a very, very valuable advice.
And if you come from a large corporate, machine where all you do is you look at your P&L and you think that's your cash flow. It's not. It dawned on me pretty quickly. I worked for large companies half my career, and then joining Yo, how important it was, and I've stuck with that ever since.
And Robin, the nuance of that question, how to help an entrepreneur, you gave a very strong set of tools. How do you help them as an individual? Because people in crisis suffer, they struggle with the self-confidence, with sleep, with like mental issues. So as a coach, as a mentor, as a work therapist, as one of our guests recently called it, how you support them on a personal level? What advice you give them there?
Well, I mean, a really good entrepreneur is a bit like an athlete. You've got to look after themselves. They've got to eat well. They've got to sleep, and they've got to have holidays. I'm a fiend for having all my CEOs will send me an Outlook invite for their holidays for the year if I can get out of them. I want them to have holidays, and I want to space them out, and I want them to spend quality time with their families. I think there's a lot going on in a 40-year-old's or 40-year-old's life, and you need to have space for the enriching part of your life, which is not work. And I think you come back much fresher if you are getting decent time off, and personal relationships with. I can't be a marriage therapist, but I do look out for people who are struggling with their other halves, whatever. But you do need any really good successful entrepreneur needs a very supportive other half. I mean, it is. I mean, be here now, which everyone used that phrase, I think is probably the biggest criticism of most entrepreneurs, because they're always thinking about their business. I suspect all of them needs to spend a bit more time. I was very bad behaved on that front. I could be in the same room, but I was nowhere anywhere close.
I think we all are, and we all can be better. My wife always said in that phase, she always said, like, you're not a heart surgeon, you're just like running some pasta restaurants.
Wow. Wow, Mario. Robin, what a great guest. I mean, his
Another
experience.
wise British man. We seem to have wise British men. There's something wise in the British, at least in the British leader we have in incredible podcast, and quite a career from the frontman at your Sushi to the private equity. So a lot of learning. So Florian, what's the learnings? What's on your notes?
I took a lot of notes because I learned a lot in this 35 minutes. So one of them is, of course, you can't do it alone. You have to find yourself a peer group. You have to find somebody who is going to help you, like we heard it before, and I like the word work therapist pretty much that Casey Johnson gave us.
And I think it's really the mix between the mentor and the peer group, because both give completely different advice. And he also said you need to find this peer group which is a little bit ahead of you.
Yeah.
And actually I was thinking when he said that, I was thinking this is actually what we gonna do here in Sri Lanka, because when we do this seminar here from Doubt to Thrive, entrepreneurs only, the main thing is we're building the frame for all the entrepreneurs and to be here and act as a peer to the problems of others. And I really believe in this strength and aligned wisdom of the group, combined obviously with the mentors and coaches here, to give answers to the problems and to regain the drive of the doubt. So the combination of mentors and peer group is very important. Then also, I think that was very important because we have a lot of situation where we as a leader take over or join a strong entrepreneur, and how to basically help in that transition. He did that, and he said you have to have mutual respect. We also heard that from Clive with Julia and Initsu. And then what Robin said, you have to respect the DNA of the founder, because that's important. That's part of the brand. And then I think on a side note, he also said you need to understand the difference between EQ and IQ. And probably what he meant with that as founders, we have a lot of emotional intelligence, and that also means a lot of emotions we need to channel. For me, one of the strongest things he said is double down in crisis. Not just like every crisis will be over and there will be light in the end of the tunnel. He said, no, use that crisis. And especially, he said it several times, and that's why we digged in. What is cheaper in crisis? Real estate, because nobody wants to rent. So suddenly you get the real estate which you cannot afford in the crisis. And he said he doubled down after the financial crisis. He doubled down after Brexit. So double down.
And COVID. Yeah. And double down in COVID. And Robin he's such a positive human being. And I was really amazed how he actually transformed doubts into drive. He said, I love the chaos. And you really can feel that he is, he's a person in such a situation that stays calm and positive in a way to make the transaction towards drive and gains energy out of
positivity.
Endless
positivity.
You have to be the chief happiness officer.
Chief happiness officer. That's what he says. Become the chief happiness officer. But he also said it's not always about life and death. And don't put more fuel into the fire. Don't exaggerate, and don't be too dramatic. Don't put fuel in the fire in the crisis. Everybody's anyhow running on the last meter. What I really like, and I circled this when he said, when I make an investment, I obviously look at this KPI and that KPI, but I also double check if that's a person I want to spend time with. And I remember we have become famous back then at Vapiano when we said one of the criteria I always said is I want to be able to be on holiday with the guys. There needs to be a connection. Do I want to be on holiday with these guys? Because you will spend so much time, and he said that as an investor, as a mentor, etc. And if you don't like that person, it will never benefit
No.
you as an investor, as a leader, but it will also not benefit the business. Strong learnings. What else we had?
Don't forget also the business aspect he brought in when he said you have to control your cost better in such situations of crisis. You have to have a very good CFO or financial skills.
Prolong the runway.
Control your cash flow.
Control your cash flow, control your costs, prolong the runway. And this is an important learning, as I mentioned, was an important learning for me, because this maybe gives you this extra 2-3 months or 2-3 weeks or whatever time you need to prove your business. Yeah,
absolutely.
And at the end, he said, every leader and every entrepreneur is like an athlete. You need to sleep good, you need to eat good, and you need to force them to take their
holidays,
their family holidays.
Wow, we hope you've enjoyed this episode as much as we did. But sharing is not just caring, it is also empowering. So recommend this podcast to fellow entrepreneurs who might need a dose of inspiration. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you'll never miss out on future episodes. Thank you for being part of the community from Doubt to Drive Entrepreneurs Only. Mario and Florian are already gearing up for the next episode. Until then, stay tuned, stay driven, and we'll be back next week.